On the afternoon of July 5, 2012, a 911 operator received a frantic phone call from Staten Island, New York. The caller was 30-year-old Jonathan Crupi. His voice sounded panicked. He told the dispatcher he had just arrived home. His wife was dead. He believed someone had broken into their condominium. Police were immediately dispatched. At first, everything pointed toward a burglary that had turned deadly. A husband returns home. A wife lies motionless inside. A home appears to have been ransacked. It seemed like a terrible crime committed by an unknown intruder. But detectives would soon discover that almost nothing about the scene was what it first appeared to be. Every room raised new questions. Every answer led to another contradiction. And before long, investigators began asking whether the killer had ever left the house at all. This is what we know. Cases like this often become remembered for a single headline, but the full story is rarely that simple. The reason this channel exists is to follow the evidence from beginning to end, so every detail can be understood in its proper context. Jonathan Crupi stood outside the condominium as officers entered. Inside, they found the body of his wife, 29-year-old Simeonette Mapes-Crupi. She was lying in the entryway of the home. The scene was violent. Investigators immediately secured the area. Crime scene technicians began photographing every room. Nothing could be moved, nothing could be overlooked. At first glance, parts of the home supported Jonathan's story. Furniture had been disturbed, rooms looked messy. A sliding glass door had been left open. Someone unfamiliar with homicide investigations might have accepted the scene exactly as it appeared. But experienced detectives are trained to notice what doesn't belong. And sometimes, what is missing matters even more than what is present. As investigators slowly examined the condominium, they noticed something unusual. Many valuable items were still exactly where they should have been. Cash had not been taken. Credit cards remained inside. Checks were untouched. Jewelry was still there. Even Simeonette's engagement ring had not been removed. For a burglary, it made very little sense. If someone had entered only to steal, why leave behind the very things burglars usually target? Another detail also stood out. There were no obvious signs of forced entry. Doors and windows showed no clear evidence that someone had broken into the home. That did not prove an intruder had never been there, but it immediately complicated Jonathan's account. The questions began almost immediately. If this was a burglary, why had nothing of real value disappeared? Why stage such disorder but ignore the obvious targets? And if someone had entered voluntarily, who had allowed them inside? While crime scene investigators worked inside the condominium, detectives began learning about the victim herself. The picture they uncovered was remarkably consistent. Simeonette Mapes-Crupi had built a reputation as someone deeply committed to helping others. She worked as a history teacher in Brooklyn. Former students described her as patient, supportive, encouraging. She mentored struggling teenagers who needed guidance beyond the classroom. She organized leadership opportunities for young girls. When students could not afford graduation expenses, she sometimes used her own money to help them purchase gowns or attend important school events. Colleagues remembered someone who cared deeply about education and the people around her. Friends spoke of her generosity, her compassion, her willingness to help without expecting recognition. To those who knew her, she represented stability, kindness, responsibility. Nothing about her life suggested she had enemies. Nothing immediately explained why someone would target her inside her own home. As detectives continued gathering information, they naturally turned their attention to the person who knew her best, her husband. Jonathan Crupi was also a teacher within New York City's public school system. On paper, they appeared to have much in common. Both educated, both working in public service, both building careers centered around helping young people. To neighbors and acquaintances, they seemed like an ordinary married couple. But investigators know that public appearances rarely tell the whole story. When detectives spoke with Jonathan, He maintained that he had come home and discovered the scene. He insisted someone must have entered while he was gone. His account fit the appearance of the house, at least initially. But homicide investigations do not end with first impressions. Every statement must be tested. Every timeline must be verified. Every physical detail must match the story being told. And before long, detectives began looking beyond the crime scene itself. They started examining the marriage, not because every spouse is guilty, but because statistics and investigative experience require that possibility to be examined first. What they found suggested the relationship had become far more complicated than many people realized. There were signs that serious problems had been developing behind closed doors. Those closest to the couple described growing tension. The image of a happy marriage was beginning to crack. As investigators expanded their interviews, another version of Jonathan slowly emerged, one that many people around him had never seen. It would reveal secret habits, hidden relationships, and decisions that threatened nearly every part of his life. For detectives, the investigation was beginning to shift. The question was no longer limited to who had entered the condominium. It was becoming something much more personal. Who had the most to lose if the truth about Jonathan Crupi ever became public? Before continuing, one brief pause. It's always interesting to see how far these stories reach. If you're following along, feel free to mention where you're watching from. It's a reminder that these cases continue to resonate far beyond the communities where they happened. As investigators dug deeper into Jonathan's background, they uncovered information that completely changed the direction of the case. The husband, grieving outside the condominium, was hiding a second life, and that discovery would become the foundation of everything that followed. As detectives continued examining Jonathan Crupi's life, the image of a devoted husband began to unravel. The more they learned, the more they realized there were two very different versions of Jonathan. One was the public school teacher his colleagues knew. The other existed almost entirely in secret. Investigators discovered that Jonathan had been living a double life for years. Behind his marriage was a pattern of deception. He had been visiting prostitutes. He regularly spent time at strip clubs, and many of the people closest to him had no idea. One relationship in particular caught investigators' attention. During the trial, a woman identified only as Miss Pumpkin testified about her connection with Jonathan. According to her testimony, they had been meeting for paid sexual encounters for approximately 3 years. The meetings happened every several weeks. Jonathan paid around $300 each time. To investigators, this was no longer simply evidence of infidelity. It established a hidden routine, a pattern of behavior, and eventually a timeline. But there was another problem. Jonathan's private life was beginning to spill into his professional one. Investigators learned that he had reportedly spent time at a strip club located near the school where he worked. According to prosecutors, some of those visits occurred during hours when he was expected to be teaching. School administrators had already become concerned about his conduct. Questions about his attendance and behavior had started attracting unwanted attention. At the same time, his marriage was deteriorating. Prosecutors argued that these problems were converging. His career was at risk, his finances could be affected, and his wife was learning more about the life he had worked so hard to hide. Friends and evidence gathered during the investigation suggested Simeonette had discovered the extent of Jonathan's deception. The trust in the marriage had been badly damaged. Prosecutors believed she intended to leave him. More importantly, they argued she was prepared to expose his lies. If that happened, Jonathan stood to lose almost everything: his marriage, his reputation, his teaching career, his financial stability, his carefully constructed public image. For investigators, motive was beginning to take shape. It did not prove murder, but it answered an important question. Who had the most to lose? Detectives now returned to the physical evidence inside the condominium. The medical examiner's findings became one of the most important pieces of the investigation. The examination showed Simeonette had not simply been stabbed. She had suffered multiple forms of violence. According to prosecutors, the attack began near the staircase. Evidence suggested she had first been pushed down the stairs. After the fall, the assault continued. She was stabbed 15 times. Several of those wounds were delivered with tremendous force. So much force that bruising consistent with the knife handle appeared on her body. The injuries reflected sustained violence. Simeonette died in the home's entryway. The medical evidence also helped investigators estimate when the attack occurred. According to prosecutors, the timing placed Jonathan at the house. That finding immediately raised another problem for his account. If the attack happened while Jonathan was still home, then his explanation that he returned later to discover the body became much harder to reconcile with the forensic evidence. Detectives compared every detail: the estimated time of death, Jonathan's movements, his statements. Each comparison created new inconsistencies. Then investigators examined the condition of the house once again. The more experienced officers studied the scene, the less convincing the burglary appeared. The sliding glass door remained one of the most important details. It was open, but an open door alone proved very little. There were still no convincing signs that anyone had forced their way inside. The rooms had been disturbed, furniture had been moved. But the disorder seemed selective. Important valuables remained untouched. The scene appeared designed to communicate one message: someone broke in, someone killed Simeonette, someone escaped. Yet the physical evidence refused to fully support that story. Every investigator knows that staged crime scenes often reveal themselves through small mistakes. Criminals tend to recreate what they believe a crime scene should look like. Real crime scenes are usually far less organized. The apparent burglary inside the Crupi home was beginning to look carefully arranged. But detectives still needed evidence that connected Jonathan directly to the murder. Suspicion alone would never be enough. Then the investigation uncovered one decision Jonathan allegedly made after his wife's death. It became one of the most disturbing facts presented during the trial. According to prosecutors, Jonathan did not immediately report finding his wife. Instead, after leaving the condominium, he met with Miss Pumpkin. The meeting was another paid sexual encounter. Only afterward, prosecutors argued, did he return home and place the frantic 911 call, claiming he had just discovered the body. The allegations stunned many people following the case. If true, it fundamentally changed how investigators viewed the timeline. The grieving husband who called police was no longer simply reporting a tragedy. Prosecutors argued he was performing a role, one carefully designed to distance himself from the killing. But allegations require proof. Detectives still needed evidence placing Jonathan exactly where prosecutors claimed he had been. That evidence would come from an unexpected source: technology, computers, cell phones, DNA. Each would preserve details long after memories faded. Each would record movements that could not easily be explained away. And together, they would begin dismantling Jonathan Crupi's version of events, one piece at a time. The investigation continued for months. Detectives understood they were facing a difficult case. There were no eyewitnesses, no surveillance camera captured the killing, and the murder weapon had never been found. If charges were going to be filed, they would depend on evidence that, on its own, might not seem decisive. The challenge was proving that every piece belonged to the same picture. Investigators began examining Jonathan Crupi's digital life. Computers, cell phones, internet history, electronic records. Unlike memories, digital evidence often leaves timestamps. It records activity without emotion, and sometimes without mercy. When detectives searched Jonathan's computers, they discovered internet searches that immediately drew attention. Among thousands of searches were several that prosecutors believed were highly significant. searches about how to slit someone's throat, how to break a person's neck, how to clean up a crime scene. The defense would later argue that these represented only a tiny fraction of Jonathan's overall internet activity. They maintained that isolated searches could easily be taken out of context. Standing alone, they argued, they did not prove murder. But prosecutors viewed them differently. To them, the searches suggested preparation, not certainty, not proof by themselves, but another piece added to a growing pattern. The investigation did not stop there. Detectives obtained Jonathan's cell phone records. They compared them with cell tower data. Those records allowed investigators to reconstruct portions of his movements before and after Simeonette's death. The digital timeline did not fully support Jonathan's account. According to prosecutors, parts of his explanation about where he had been that day conflicted with the phone evidence. Again, no single inconsistency proved guilt, but investigators were no longer looking at isolated facts. They were assembling a sequence: medical evidence, the staged burglary, the hidden relationship with Miss Pumpkin, the estimated time of death, the internet searches, the cell phone records. Each detail reinforced the next. Meanwhile, DNA evidence added another important layer. Investigators were able to connect Miss Pumpkin to Jonathan's activities through forensic evidence gathered during the investigation. Her testimony became increasingly important. She confirmed the long-running nature of their paid relationship. She described their meetings over approximately 3 years. Most significantly, her testimony helped prosecutors establish Jonathan's movements after the murder. According to the prosecution's timeline, Jonathan left the house after killing his wife. He then met with Miss Pumpkin. Only later did he return home to call 911. That sequence became one of the central arguments presented to the jury. Detectives also spent countless hours reviewing Jonathan's own statements. Every interview, every explanation, every timeline. When investigators compare multiple interviews, they often look for consistency. Truthful accounts generally remain stable. False accounts sometimes require adjustments. Prosecutors argued Jonathan's explanations contained numerous inconsistencies. Some involved timing, others involved his movements. Some conflicted with forensic findings, others with electronic records. Individually, many appeared small. Collectively, prosecutors argued they painted a very different picture from the one Jonathan presented on July 5th. By late 2012, investigators believed they had reached a conclusion. The evidence pointed overwhelmingly in one direction. On November 2012, Jonathan Crupi was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. The case immediately drew widespread public attention across New York. The facts seemed almost impossible to reconcile. 2 respected public school teachers, one dead, the other accused of killing her. Then came another revelation that deeply disturbed many following the case. The allegation that Jonathan had visited an escort shortly after the killing became one of the most discussed aspects of the investigation. For many people, it was difficult to comprehend. Not because it proved murder, but because of what prosecutors argued it revealed about his priorities and state of mind that day. As news coverage expanded, attention increasingly shifted towards Simeonette herself. Friends remembered the teacher who stayed late to help struggling students, the mentor who encouraged young women to pursue leadership opportunities, the educator who quietly paid for graduation gowns and prom expenses when families could not afford them. Many former students spoke publicly about the lasting impact she had made on their lives. The contrast between her public legacy and the allegations surrounding her death made the case especially painful. Her family remained steadfast throughout the investigation. From the beginning, they insisted they wanted justice. They attended court proceedings, they followed each development, and they waited for the evidence to be presented before a jury. 3 years after the killing, that moment finally arrived. The trial began in 2015. It would last approximately 5 weeks. The courtroom became the place where every piece of evidence would finally be examined together. The prosecution openly acknowledged the weaknesses in their case. There were no eyewitnesses. The murder weapon had never been recovered. No confession existed. Instead, prosecutors argued something different. Circumstantial evidence is still evidence, and when independent pieces consistently point toward the same conclusion, they can establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense strongly disagreed. Their strategy focused on creating reasonable doubt wherever possible. They argued the home had genuinely been burglarized. They challenged the significance of the internet searches. They emphasized the absence of the murder weapon, and they reminded jurors that infidelity, however morally damaging, was not proof of homicide. Jonathan, they argued, may have been an unfaithful husband, but that alone did not make him a murderer. The jury now faced a difficult task, not deciding whether Jonathan had lived a dishonest life, but determining whether prosecutors had proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he had taken Simeonette's life. Their decision would determine whether years of investigation had uncovered the truth, or whether unanswered questions still remained. For nearly 5 weeks, jurors listened carefully. They examined photographs from the crime scene. They heard testimony from detectives, forensic experts, digital analysts, and witnesses. They reviewed phone records, computer searches, DNA evidence, medical findings, and Jonathan Crupi's own statements. No single piece of evidence answered every question. That was never the prosecution's argument. Instead, prosecutors asked the jury to step back and view the investigation as a whole. They argued the evidence formed one continuous chain. The medical examiner's findings suggested Simeonette was attacked while Jonathan was still home. The burglary scene appeared staged rather than genuine. Valuables remained untouched. There were no convincing signs of forced entry. His hidden relationship with Miss Pumpkin exposed a secret life his wife had allegedly uncovered. Digital evidence challenged his timeline. Internet searches suggested preparation. His movements after the killing, prosecutors argued, were inconsistent with those of a husband who had just discovered his wife's body. Each piece supported the next. The defense urged the jury to see those same facts differently. They argued that suspicion should never replace proof. The missing murder weapon, they said, was significant. Without eyewitnesses, they argued, the prosecution was asking jurors to make assumptions. They maintained that Jonathan's internet history had been presented without proper context. Thousands of ordinary searches had been ignored, while only a handful were highlighted. The defense also argued that Jonathan's affairs and visits to escorts showed serious moral failings, but morality was not the question before the court. Being an unfaithful husband did not automatically make someone a killer. Ultimately, the jury had to decide whether the circumstantial evidence eliminated every reasonable doubt. After deliberations, they reached a verdict. In July 2015, Jonathan Crupi was found guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict marked the end of years of investigation, but for Simeonette's family, it did not bring back the person they had lost. At the sentencing hearing on September 23, 2015, the courtroom shifted from evidence to impact. Family members spoke about the woman who had been taken from them. Her mother addressed the court. She described the pain that had followed the family every day since July 5, 2012. She said Jonathan still had the possibility of a future. He would continue living. He would continue breathing. But their family had effectively received a life sentence the day Simeonette died. She also expressed disappointment that Jonathan's family had never reached out or shown remorse after the killing. It was a statement rooted not in anger alone, but in grief that had remained unchanged through years of legal proceedings. The judge then imposed the maximum sentence allowed under New York law for the conviction, 25 years to life in prison. Jonathan Crupi maintained his innocence. The case did not end there. His legal team appealed the conviction. Among other arguments, they challenged evidence obtained through search warrants. They contended that some of the material presented at trial should never have been admitted. The appeal required higher courts to examine not only the evidence itself, but also the procedures investigators followed during the case. In 2019, New York's Appellate Division issued its decision. The court upheld the conviction. The judges concluded that the search warrants had been lawfully obtained and properly executed. They also found that Jonathan had received a fair trial. With that ruling, the conviction remained in place. Today, the Jonathan Crupi case is frequently cited as an example of how modern homicide investigations rely on far more than eyewitness testimony. There was no confession. There was no recovered murder weapon. Yet investigators combined multiple independent forms of evidence. Forensic pathology established the nature and timing of the attack. Crime scene analysis challenged the appearance of a burglary. Digital forensic examinations revealed internet activity. Cell phone records reconstructed movements. DNA evidence confirmed key parts of the timeline. Witness testimony filled in critical gaps. Each piece, viewed separately, had limitations. Viewed together, prosecutors argued, they revealed a deliberate attempt to disguise murder as a burglary. The case also became a reminder that carefully staged crime scenes often fail under detailed examination. Experienced investigators do not stop at appearances. They ask why. Why was the house disturbed in that particular way? Why were valuable items left behind? Why did physical evidence fail to support the story being told? Those questions ultimately reshaped the entire investigation. But beyond the forensic evidence and courtroom arguments, another story remains. The story of Simeonette Mapes-Crupi. Former students continued to remember the teacher who believed education could change lives. Colleagues remembered someone who quietly helped others without asking for recognition. Families remembered the educator who made sure financial hardship did not prevent students from celebrating important milestones. Those memories survived long after the headlines faded. In many ways, they became the most lasting part of the case. The murder drew national attention. The investigation demonstrated the growing importance of digital evidence. The trial showed how circumstantial evidence can be used to build a compelling case. But none of those developments overshadow the life that was lost. If there's one reason these cases continue to be examined years later, it's because understanding the full story matters just as much as knowing the verdict. If you'd like to continue exploring carefully researched timelines like this one, you're always welcome to return as more cases are documented with the same level of detail. More than a decade after that 911 call, the carefully staged scene inside a Staten Island condominium has become a case study in modern criminal investigation. And while Jonathan Crupi continues serving a sentence of 25 years to life, the legacy most people choose to remember belongs to Simeonette Mapes-Crupi, a teacher whose commitment to her students outlived the violence that ended her life.